Okay, good evening, everyone. You're looking at a screen of upcoming virtual programs within the Public Library. And by the way, my name is Cheryl Pemberton. You may or may not know me from past programs. I do these a lot. We have one coming up. Let's see. This one's the 1st of August. Is Star Wars: A Box Office Jump into Hyperspace. And this program is by Frank Mendoza. He is a film scholar, and I actually watched a program of his at another library this afternoon at work, and it was all about baseball movies. So it was actually really interesting. So I'm sure this one will be too. Coming up at the end of August, Medicare in Plain English. This one also is going to be presented by a representative from North Kansas City Hospital. It's not you, is it, Lindsay? Or is somebody else doing it? Or?
No idea. Yeah.
Not you. Okay. Which, as someone who's rapidly approaching Medicare, I really would like to watch this program. Let's see, Creating Art from the Ordinary. That is coming up and it could just it's just about 3 weeks. Looking forward to that one. Oh, actually, I'm going to be on vacation that week, so no, I guess I'll have to watch the recording. And then for armchair travelers, with more at the end of August, Natural Wonders in Salzburg, Slovenia, and Croatia. So doesn't that look beautiful? It makes you want to visit. Do my housekeeping announcements, and then I'll turn it over to you. Let's see, and we can still, let people in as we go. My name is Cheryl Pemberton. I'm with the Mid-Continent Public Library. Glad to see you all here tonight. And I just have a couple of housekeeping announcements. If you could please keep your mic muted throughout the program. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will answer as many as possible at the end of the program as time allows. And I will be putting a link to a survey. The survey will be at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program. We do ask if you could fill that survey out when you have time. And if you did not get the handouts that I sent out about half hour ago, email me directly and I will send them to you. Probably not till tomorrow though. So in the meantime, I want to go ahead and introduce you to Lindsay Robinson, who is a registered dietitian with the North Kansas City Hospital. Thank you for joining us tonight, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about tonight's topic. I'm going to pull my PowerPoint up. Perfect. So yes, my name's Lindsay, and I'm one of the dietitians at the hospital. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about healthy cooking with diabetes. And any questions you have, put it in the chat Q&A box, and we'll get to it at the end. So let's dive in. So these are the 3 main objectives that we will be hitting today. We are going to discuss the evidence-based recommendations to best manage diabetes and learn how nutrition affects blood sugar. We are going to learn how to meet individual nutrition needs while maintaining the pleasure of eating. And we're going to learn how to prepare balanced meals and snacks. So there's a lot of recipes in today's presentation, websites, references. So that will all be in the PowerPoints that should, like Cheryl said, email to you or can be emailed to you too. So don't worry about that. So to talk about diabetes, let's learn about what diabetes is. So diabetes is a disease that occurs when the body's blood glucose, which is also known as our blood sugar, is too high. And glucose is the body's main energy source. And the body can either make glucose, but it also comes from certain foods that we eat, specifically carbohydrates. And we're going to talk a lot more about those guys. Another part of this is a hormone called insulin, and this is made by the pancreas that helps glucose get into our body cells so that we can actually use this for energy. And with diabetes, either the body's not using insulin properly or it's not making enough of it. So with that, then glucose stays in our blood and cannot reach the cells. Making sure I'm not missing anything. Awesome. Okay. Perfect. So a little bit about how glucose gets absorbed. Good little visual to kind of comprehend some of this. Carbohydrates from our diet. So you can kind of see some fruits, milks, bread, beans, certain vegetables. Those get broken down into glucose by our digestive system. And then that glucose enters our bloodstream. And then with the help of the hormone insulin, it gets unlocked and then it can be used in cells through our body for energy and other various things. So this is what happens when our insulin is working as it should. But when our insulin isn't working as well as it should, or we don't have enough insulin, then that's where it cannot get into our cells. And instead, the glucose or blood sugar just stays in our blood. And there's a lot of different types of diabetes. So there's type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and gestational diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, this is an autoimmune disease where the body's immune system attacks the beta cells in the pancreas that create insulin and destroy them. So the pancreas cannot make insulin or not enough insulin. And most often type 1 diabetes is diagnosed at a young age, but it can actually develop at any age and any stage of life. So this is called LADA, or latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. And unfortunately, we don't know how to prevent type 1 diabetes, and we have no idea what triggers it. But we do know there is a strong genetic component, as is with a lot of things with health. But if you have a sibling or a parent or a first degree of relative with type 1 diabetes, it does increase someone's risk. And general treatment for type 1 diabetes is taking insulin every day to live. I always like to say that with type 1 diabetes, it's just like the pancreas is on the outside of your body when you're having to manually make that pancreas work and give yourself insulin. And then we have type 2 diabetes. This is where the pancreas may be making insulin, but the body's not using it efficiently. This is often referred to as insulin resistance. And this is the most common type of diabetes. And there are risk factors to having type 2 diabetes, such as overweight or obesity, having a family history, being age 45 or older, just because as we naturally get older, that just increases everyone's risk. Certain ethnicities like African American, American Indian, Asian American, Hispanic, and Latino can increase the risk of getting diabetes. Pacific Islander, not being physically active, having pre-diabetes, or having a history of gestational diabetes. And kind of like type 1, this can develop at any age as well, even during childhood. And the treatment for this is kind of a lot of different things: healthy eating, exercise, medication, and or insulin. And even within the healthy eating scope, there's a lot of different options. And that's what we're really going to be focusing on today is, what to eat, how nutrition affects it, all the different options that are out there. But then there's a lot of different exercise options, medication options, different types of insulins. So it's we can really tailor it to make it work for you. And then gestational diabetes, this is a type of diabetes that develops during pregnancy due to pregnancy hormones. This causes insulin resistance, which is making it harder for the mother's body to use insulin. But the baby's insulin is working completely normal during this time. So one of the complications that can occur with gestational diabetes is the sugar from mom's blood goes to baby. Baby digests it just fine and just increases larger baby at birth. But most of the time, this diabetes does go away once the baby is born because it's due to the pregnancy hormones. We don't know what causes gestational diabetes, but it does increase the chance of developing type 2 later in life. And I always tell all of our gestational moms, there's nothing they've done wrong. There's nothing you could have prevented. It's purely hormones, luck of the draw when you're pregnant. But it does go away once people give birth. And then treatment for this can include healthy eating, physical activity, daily blood glucose testing, and or insulin injection sometimes. So if you're thinking like me, it's like, okay, if you just said type 1 and type 2 can develop at any age, then how do you know which one I have? So testing and diagnoses is all done pretty much by most blood tests. So type 1, they use an antibody test or a C-peptide test. An antibody test measures just certain antibodies in your blood that will be triggered if it is type 1. And then the C-peptide test, also a blood test, measures that pancreatic beta cell function. Type 2, this is another blood test called an HbA1c or a hemoglobin A1c test, and that measures a 2 to 3 month average of our blood sugar. If you've been to the doctor, had your labs done before, sometimes they take your blood glucose. I don't typically like to look at just that lab value when you're talking about if your diabetes is managed, if you're diagnosing, because there's so many things that can affect our blood sugar besides that one point in time. So that HbA1c is a really nice 2 to 3 month average. And this can not only be used to diagnose type 2, it can also tell us how well diabetes is getting managed. And then gestational diabetes, they make you drink a really sugary beverage called an oral glucose tolerance test. And they test your blood sugar every hour for 3 hours to see how your body reacts. So regardless of the type of diabetes, it's really important to manage diabetes and control our blood sugars. Just because uncontrolled diabetes does increase the risk for many serious health problems. But great news is that with the correct treatment, recommended lifestyle changes, many people with diabetes can prevent or delay the onset of complications. And really, my one thing I always want people to know is it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We can't just shove everyone in the same bubble and say, manage your health the same way. It doesn't work like that. So it's really creating that plan for yourself that you can enjoy and sustain. So whether that's healthy eating, exercise, medication, and lots of options within there. But to really dive into the nutrition part of this, the 3 main food groups or macronutrients in our diet are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And these are just nutrients in food that provide us with calories or energy. Proteins, more specifically, this will be like your meat, fish, eggs, dairy, beans, nuts, seeds, nut butters, like peanut butters and almond butters. This is required for tissue repair, building lean muscle mass, immune system function, keeping us full, and it really helps keep our blood sugar stable throughout the day, along with many other functions. And then fats, this is like your oils, butters, margarine, salad dressings, nuts, seeds, avocados. It's more of a slow burning source of energy, and we also need it to absorb all the important vitamins and minerals. Plus, it keeps us full. And then carbohydrates, this is the food group that affects our blood sugars, and that comes from bread, rice, pasta, all fruits, milk, yogurt, beans, and then your 3 starchy vegetables, peas, corn, and potatoes, and a lot of our sweets. But more specifically on carbohydrates, those get broken down into glucose, directly impacts our blood sugars. But the primary function of carbs is to provide energy for the body, especially the brain and nervous system. Fat is a source of energy as well, but not for our brain. So we still need carbs for our brain to function. And it's important to know that each of these macronutrients do serve a purpose in our diet, and any diet that eliminates one is not a good sustainable eating plan. But really important to note too is just because carbs affect our blood sugar or blood glucose doesn't mean we should eliminate them from our diet. We're going to really talk about portions, really dive into all this as well. But really the goal with carbohydrates is moderation. The body's really weird in how it works. If you don't eat enough carbs, your blood sugar gets too low. And then what happens is your liver, it kind of regulates your blood sugars. So your liver brings your blood sugar back to normal. But with diabetes, your liver doesn't know when to stop. So it shoots it up too high. So it's crazy that not eating carbs or not eating enough carbs can make your blood sugar high. Or if you eat too many carbs, yeah, it's going to make your blood sugar high. So it's kind of finding that middleman of, I want you to eat them, just anything in excess we don't want to do. So effects of protein and fat, these don't affect your blood sugar, but that doesn't mean we can just eat however much protein and fat we want, just because anything in excess gets stored as fat and we don't want. And having larger fat cells may prevent efficient glucose absorption, which may require more insulin. So all those carbohydrate containing foods are going to fall under 2 different categories, our complex carbs and our simple carbs. We want to choose your complex carbs more often. These would be considered the whole wheat, whole grains, beans and legumes, any kind of fruit, and those peas, corn, potatoes. They just have a lot more nutrients, vitamins, minerals, fiber, what's be more anti-inflammatory, keep us more full. and they don't spike your blood sugar as much. So they digest slower, which prevents the peaks, the spikes, and the drops and the valleys in our blood sugar. The word limit, it's not avoid. You can still really have all foods. There's no food off limits, but do limit the simple carbs like juice, soda, sugar, candy, white breads, white pastas, just less nutrients, more processed. And so not having enough fiber can cause our blood sugar to spike a bit more. And we tend to maybe get a little bit hungry quicker. But as long as you're controlling portions of these and eating other foods with it, you can still have white rice, white bread, and these kinds of things. But really, it's just that carb moderation is key here. And then all of your vegetables besides your peas, corn, potatoes, no carbs here. They technically have a little bit, but it's not a significant amount to do anything to your blood sugar. So we're going to talk more about those, but you don't technically need to count them as a carbohydrate containing food. So this would be like lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, broccoli, spinach, carrots, bell peppers, zucchini, mushrooms, so on and so forth. They're more just water-based, lots of fiber, vitamins, minerals, pretty low in calories to keep us full and help control portions in other areas. And it can be fresh, frozen, or canned. These are all going to give us nutrition. If you're doing canned vegetables, maybe get the no salt added, but completely taste bud preference here. And then talk a little bit about fat. So even though fat doesn't affect our blood sugar, it does play a role with our heart health. And what I tell everyone with diabetes is all we can do is take one thing at a time. So it's important to note, but we don't have to focus on heart healthy eating. That's always something we can incorporate later down the line. Or if that's something you really want to focus on right now, we can put something else on the back burner. But we do want to limit saturated fats and trans fats because these increase the risk of heart disease. We do need a little bit of saturated fat in our diet. So that's why it's more of a limit. A good visual to think of this as is anything salt at room temp. That's kind of how it sits in our arteries. So like your butters, your margarines, your high fat meats, like your bacon, bologna, sausage, hot dogs, we want to limit. Coconut oil is the one oil that's solid at room temp, and whole fat dairy. And then we want to focus instead of choosing those unsaturated fats, because these are going to decrease the risk of heart disease. These are generally liquid at room temp because that's how it's going to flow right through our arteries. So pretty much any of your oils besides coconut oil, like olive oil, avocado oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, peanut oil, and then all of your nuts and seeds and avocados count as this as well. So for dairy, we want to generally do more of your 1% skim, low-fat yogurt, low-fat cottage cheeses here. But when you get so nitpicky with, Swiss versus cheddar versus Parmesan, all those different types of cheeses, they're kind of all the same. More of your lower sodium may have more fat. Some of your lower fat cheeses may have more salt. So if you're really needed to focus on one or the other, we can definitely individualize that. But in the grand scheme of things, just don't overdo it. Taste bud preference, because it's still a great source of protein. And then with proteins, we want to do more of your lean protein. This is more for heart health as well, because a lot of our foods are going to kind of overlap in each of our food groups. So wanting to do like 90% lean beef, skinless chicken, pork chops, turkey, all your fish and seafood, and eggs. Eggs don't raise your cholesterol whatsoever. I know that's kind of been one myth that's been out there for a while, but if you enjoy some scrambled eggs, boiled eggs, great source of protein here. But wanting to do more of like your round or loin cuts of your red meats, those have less of that saturated fat, like a sirloin, pork loin, tenderloin, beef round, or you can always trim that visible fat as well. But just to kind of mix it up, give you a little bit of variety, we have a bunch of great plant-based protein options as well, like your beans, lentils, soy products, like tofu, edamame, tempeh, nut seeds, peanut butters, almond butters, cashew butter, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, and quinoa. It's just those processed meats you want to limit, like your bacon, bologna, sausage, hot dogs, has more of those saturated fats. In general, whether it's protein or just kind of general cooking methods, trying to focus on bake, broil, grill, steam, poach, and limit the deep fat frying. And just a little bit more note on fiber, since I've mentioned it a lot already. Fiber does a lot for us. So it's going to help lower our LDL cholesterol, which is the type of cholesterol that in large amounts can build up plaque in our arteries. It's going to lower blood pressure, promote bowel regularity, keep our blood sugar stable, keep us full, and help with weight loss. So this is where I tell people, if we want to eat more fiber, we have to eat carbs a little bit, because that's where most of our fiber is going to come from. So those whole grains, beans, legumes, any fruit, but then both the starchy and the non-starchy vegetables will give us that fiber. If you're curious on what the recommendation is, it's 35 grams a day for men and 25 grams a day for women. You don't have to count that, just if you're curious on what those numbers even mean, or kind of what should you be shooting for. So to kind of bring a lot of this together, talking about balanced meals and snacks. So we want to make sure we're eating a variety of foods for meals and snacks. And really one of the major things here is whenever you eat a meal or a snack, eat some sort of carbohydrate food with a protein, because foods individually won't give you everything you need. Carbs are great. We need them for energy. They're tasty, but carbs aren't filling. It takes a lot of it to keep us full, and then we're going to be hungry within an hour or two. Plus, it spikes our blood sugar more if we're just eating a carb. So a lot of people tell me, like, I can't eat bananas, I can't eat fruit, I can't eat oatmeal, but that's because it's only eating a carb. If you were to eat a protein with it, it's not going to spike your blood sugar as much, and then it's going to keep it stable for about 4 to 5 hours, and you're going to be a lot more full. But I don't want you to only get protein, because that's when your blood sugar is kind of low because you're not getting the carbs. And that's when that liver can kick in and spike your blood sugar too high. So it's really kind of how you can put the two together. And we're going to talk about some snacks next. And the goal is we want to eat consistent amounts of carbohydrates. We're still going to talk a lot about portions, but it's not beneficial to do like a really high carb breakfast and a low carb lunch and whatever at dinner. We want to get the same amount each time we eat. So more consistency rather than kind of all over the place throughout the day. And then anywhere you can incorporate more fruits and vegetables for nutrients and fiber, the better. And then we really want to eat about every 2 to 5 hours during the day. So you can honestly eat however many meals and snacks you want. It's really kind of what you prefer, what works best for your routine. But your blood sugar will drop after 5 hours, because you just haven't eaten, haven't had any sort of nutrition in a while, but that's when that liver kicks in again. So whenever we go longer than 5 hours, our blood sugar can spike. So it's crazy to think that if you're going 8 or 9 hours without eating and your blood sugar's high, it's because we haven't eaten. It's not what you ate 8 or 9 hours ago. It's the silly liver, how it works. But you do want to give your body a 2-hour break to digest what you just had. Because your blood sugars are going to spike after you eat. That's normal, but then we just want them to come back down. So kind of give that 2-hour break. So that can look like 3 meals, 3 snacks, 2 meals, 2 snacks, 3 meals, no snacks, 6 small meals. It's just kind of roughly ballpark range at 2 to 5 hours. And this is only during the day. You don't need to be waking up every 2 to 5 hours during the nighttime. So again, you're going to be getting this in the email, so don't feel like you need to write it down or take a picture. But just some general snack ideas on how to do the pairing of these carbs and proteins. Please change it up to what you like. There's so many different ways you can mix and match this. But maybe you want to do like Greek yogurt with some granola and strawberries. Greek yogurt for your protein, granola and strawberries for those carbs. Energy bites. So there's a lot of fun recipes you can look up. But the main basis of a lot of energy bites will give you oats and honey and like peanut butter or almond butters. And then you can add kind of whatever you want to it. Any sort of trail mix, because a lot of your trail mixes have some sort of nuts with dried fruit. Even in a little bit of M&Ms is okay, because you're still getting that balance. Cottage cheese and pineapple, banana and a protein shake. My go-to is a banana and a chocolate protein shake. And then like almonds and blueberries, apples and peanut butter, grapes and cheese. steamed edamame. And edamame is a type of Asian bean. It looks like a sugar snap pea, but you only eat the inside bean. People either love it or they hate it, but I hear mixed things. Some people love it, some people they're not a fan of, and that's completely fine. But you can get it in like those 5-minute steam bowl bags in the frozen section. But they also make edamame pasta too. You could do like a hard-boiled egg with a peach, or hummus and cucumbers, hummus and bell peppers, hummus and tomatoes. Lots of ideas here. So really, to dive into the whole portion conversation, there's a lot of different tools we can use. Again, it's finding what's going to work best for you. One of those things is counting carbohydrates. And with this, you want to keep in mind, we want to be consistent at meals. So if you want to give carb counting a go, we're only counting per meal or per snack, not per day, because it's a clean slate each time you eat. You always either get 45 to 60, regardless if you went under or over previously. But with carb counting, it can be a good short-term tool to get you familiar with what foods have carbs, portion sizes, and then once you get an idea of if you're kind of eating same things over and over again, you won't need to count it, because then you just know like, oh, this is a good amount here. This is said in general because everyone has different nutrition needs. So some people, I've recommended 30 carbs per meal if they're kind of smaller, but people who are taller, they sometimes get up to 75 carbs for a meal. And it also depends on how many snacks you're doing or how many meals you're doing. But generally, I say women around 45 per meal, men around 60, snacks about 15 to 30. So not a carryover plan, unfortunately. So any unused grams of carbs cannot carry over into the next meal or a snack. So if you're shooting for 45 to 60 at breakfast, but you only eat 30, that doesn't mean we can carry 30 over into our lunch. But if you eat 80 carbs at breakfast, I still want you to get 45 to 60 at your lunch. So clean slate each time you eat. Plus, it's a lot easier to keep track of mentally. And remember, just consistency. So there's a couple different ways, how to determine carb content in our foods. We're going to talk about food labels, but then also you can use any app. MyFitnessPal is a really common one. There's a bunch of free things out there, so don't pay for it. You may have to do a couple exit out of their ads so you don't pay. But you can Google it too, because a lot of food products don't have a food label. And I've put the carb content of those foods in this PowerPoint, and we'll talk about those. But if you want to look at a food label, the first thing you want to look at is that serving size. And that's what I circled in red. So for whatever this food product is, 2/3 cup is a serving. And then we want to look at the total carbohydrates in the grams. And I've circled that as well. So this example has 37 grams of carbohydrates for 2/3 cup. If you're shooting for 45 carbohydrates, you're close enough ballpark range. I would say you're fine. You don't have to go out of your way to get a couple more grams. But if you're shooting for 60, you could double this. So I always tell people, one of the main things I want people to know is that serving size is not portion size. Very common misconception, but as long as you're doing the math with your number of carbs, you can double it, you can triple it, you can half it. Just make the numbers work. Because I always like to pick on Oreos. Serving size of Oreos is 2. I'm going to eat way more than 2 Oreos, as most people probably would. And you can still have more than 2 Oreos and be within your carb goals. So as long as you're kind of looking at the math there. And then under that bolded total carbohydrate, it's indented. It says dietary fiber, total sugars, and added sugars. Those are already counted into that 37. Very confusing as well, because the word sugar is getting thrown around to mean way too many different things. We say blood sugar, we say added sugars, natural sugars, but all carbs break down to sugar, and that's what affects our blood sugar. So just look at that 37. And then if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, this doesn't add up to 37, and that's because they didn't list your starches. So all those carb foods will be either considered a starch, a fiber, or a sugar. So it's just not giving you the full picture. And then total sugars, it says 12, added sugars 10. That means it's 2 grams of natural sugar. So it's just it, and then you can kind of see that with the fat too. How do you go from 8 grams of total fat to 1 gram of saturated, 0 grams of trans fat? That's because there's 7 grams of unsaturated fats. So food labels would just be really, really long if they kind of ever gave you every little detail. So really the main takeaway here is just look at the total carbs. I don't even like that total sugars because it's completely irrelevant. If anything, we want to limit added sugars for overall health. And that's 25 grams a day for women, 36 grams a day for men. But if you're wanting to like control your blood sugars, still watch the total carbs. So now we're just going to kind of get some practice by getting comfortable with food labels, looking at some options here. So this one is a plain low-fat Greek yogurt. Serving size of this one is 3/4 cup, only giving us 7 carbs. So if you're doing this as a snack, add some granola, like that first one, add some berries, add some granola, 15 to 30. Or if you're having this with a meal, you can certainly have a lot more. And I'm picking on yogurt too, because they're kind of all over the place. So with yogurts, you really want to look at that label, because now we have like a fruit flavored Yoplait yogurt. For one of these has 27 grams of carbs. So you can definitely make both fit. It's just this one we wouldn't want to add fruit and granola to because it's already had some added carbohydrates. Pizza. So this is like a typical frozen pizza. Up at the top there, it says serving size is 1/6 of a pizza. So if you were to cut this thing into 6 slices, one slice, it says total carbohydrates is 35, which is a lot. I feel like in my head, I'm like, I'm going to have way more than a slice or even 2 slices of pizza. So for something like this, it's meant to just kind of be more mindful and just kind of help us, make informed decisions. So it's not that I wouldn't want you to eat the pizza. I would want you to have a couple slices. It's just what other foods can we add with this to keep us full? And so the answer to that question is adding more vegetables, adding more protein, or adding some fats. That's really going to help expand your meal so you're not just eating more carbs. Or if it's a special occasion, it's okay to have, we don't have to be perfect with this every day all the time. Just we don't want your blood sugar running high all the time. But 3 slices is already at 105 carbohydrates. And it's not the craziest thing in the world to say, I could probably eat this whole pizza and then I'm over 200 carbohydrates. So again, maybe if you want to do this pizza, get like a salad kit, like a bag salad, add some nuts, add some boiled eggs. So, load up on those veggies if you want to add some avocados on top of your salad. And then you have 2 slices of this pizza. That's not going to spike your blood sugar if, versus just eating the pizza or eating more than 2 slices. So this is, I wrote out, like, obviously fruits don't have a food label. So you can't look at a banana and know that it has 29 grams of carbohydrates. So this can be Googled, this can be used as an app, or you can always refer back to this PowerPoint to kind of know the carb content of your fruits. All of your fruits are going to be good for you. It's just very situational. So yes, bananas are your highest carbohydrate containing fruit at about 30. And then strawberries for half a cup are around 6. And I put them in order from highest and then to lowest. So bananas highest, strawberries lowest. But, if you're shooting for 60 for a meal, you're going to want to eat something else besides just strawberries. But if you've already used up a lot of your carbs, maybe don't go for the banana. So it's really, what have you eaten or what do I need to eat? But we, kind of make all of those foods fit. Vegetables. I highlighted the main vegetables that give you carbs. So the potatoes, the corn and peas, and your winter squash will give you a little bit of carbs as well. And winter squash is considered acorn, butternut squash, spaghetti squash. Your zucchini and your summer yellow squash, those don't have carbs. But as you can see, like beets, 8 grams of carbs, onion, 7, broccoli, 6. Anything with about 5 carbs or less is considered 0. So even though those are technically a little bit above 5, in the grand scheme of things, they won't affect your blood sugar. So you can technically count them if you want. But that's where I'm like, anything besides kind of peas, corn, potatoes, and maybe those winter squash, I wouldn't worry about it. Grains. So a lot of your cereals, you have to look at the label because it can be anywhere from 12 to 50 grams. And servings on cereals are a little bit different too. Some say serving size is half a cup or a cup. Bread, it's going to be very different as well. I would recommend looking at your food label because some breads can be like pretty tiny and thin. Some can be pretty big and thick. So I would say most one slice of bread is about 12 to 20. In general, we kind of average it out to about 15 for a slice. Oatmeal, half a cup dry. And be careful when you're looking at your food labels or something like this, because a lot of your starches double when they get cooked. So half a cup of dry oatmeal is actually 1 cup cooked. So this is about 27 carbs. About an 8-inch tortilla is 25 grams. Rice for half a cup cooked is 23. So, if you're shooting for 45 carbs, you can have a whole cup of rice. It's just maybe what else you're eating with it. So if you want to do like beans, do half a cup of rice and then like some beans too. Quinoa, half a cup cooked is 21. Pasta, half a cup cooked is 19. Again, I'm not just going to eat half a cup of pasta. That's going to be like 3 bites and then my pasta's gone. So if you want to do a cup of pasta, that's only 40, rounding for math to make it easier. But if you want to do 1.5 cups, that's 60 carbs. You can still make that work. But then I even think about what 1.5 cups looks like, and that's really still not a lot of pasta. So that's where kind of adding more protein, veggies, and fats to keep you full to where you're not just eating carbs. And then crackers, 4 crackers is 9. So if you want to do 8 crackers, it'll only be 18. So, those serving sizes can be a little silly. Dairy and beans, yogurts, anywhere from 7 to 32, just checking that label. Milk, about 1 cup is about 12 grams of carbs. And carb content does not change whether it's low fat or whole or 2%. Cottage cheese and cheese. Dairy can be confusing because milks and yogurt will have carbs, but cottage cheese and cheese, it's not a significant amount to where it's mainly just protein, and I would still go out of your way to eat some carb-containing food with those. And then beans for a cup are anywhere from 35 to 47. And just to list out your sweeteners and condiments, because it can add up pretty quickly. Like looking at barbecue sauce and ketchup, I'm obviously eating a lot more than just a tablespoon of like ketchup with my French fries, but it's just being mindful that, hey, I can't just like use ketchup as a free food. I need to account a little bit for the carbs, because even if I'm using 3 tablespoons, I'm already at 15 grams of carbohydrates. Salad dressings, whether it's oil-based or ranch, it's really not a significant amount. Of course, depends on how much you're using. Hummus, 2 grams per tablespoon. So you can have a lot of hummus to get you those carbs. Butter, mayo, mustard, not a significant amount there. So I really wouldn't worry about those last 3. And then honey, agave, jams, jellies, maple syrup, monk fruit, generally all around a tablespoon, that 12 to 18 range. And so we're going to talk about artificial sweeteners, sugar alcohols, but if you want to use your real deal honey, real natural sweeteners, just account for it in your carbs. But some people prefer to have more oatmeal and using those artificial sweeteners, or just cut back on your oatmeal if you want to have a little bit of honey. Really, it just kind of all breaks down to playing give and take of how do I want to spend my carbs? Do I want to spend my carbs all on one food, or do I want to spend it across a couple different things? Both are fine. But be mindful, monk fruit. I feel like a lot of people think monk fruit doesn't have carbs, but it can. So just checking that food label. But monk fruit technically by itself, a tablespoon does have 12. So to kind of apply this a little bit, we're going to go through a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack. That would all be great options of balanced meals, shooting for around 45 grams per meal and 15 for a snack. But of course, change it to what you like. But an English muffin, one English muffin, so like a breakfast sandwich or something, really only has about 30 carbs. So if you're doing English muffin with 2 fried eggs or scrambled eggs, a slice of tomatoes, and a cup of strawberries, that would get you about 42 carbs. So right there in that 45-ish range. One English muffin has about 30, and a cup of strawberries has about 12. So if you're shooting for 60, you could add in another food. You can increase the strawberries, whatever you'd like. Or if you're shooting maybe 30 carbs for a meal, maybe just do half a cup of strawberries. But this is a good balanced meal because it gives you a carb with your English muffin and strawberries, and you're getting some protein in your eggs. And then just tomato for more fiber to keep you full. For lunch, you could do like a turkey sandwich with mayo and mustard, carrots and guac, and half a cup of grapes. And this is actually a pretty decent size meal, and it's only 45 carbs. So your turkey will be your protein here. 2 pieces of bread is around 30. So a lot of like hot dogs, hamburgers, sandwiches are really around 30, maybe 40 depending on the bread size. Mayo and mustard, carrots and guac, no carbs there. And then half a cup of grapes around-ish 15. I think it's technically 13, but ballpark range. So again, change this up to what you like, but this could be a good example of you're getting some veggies, you're getting protein, you're getting carbs in that lunch. Snack, we could do like an orange with a handful of almonds and a cheese stick. Almonds, when you look at the carbs in almonds, or if you look at something like that, it's maybe like 6 or a little bit more or less than that. So you would still want to kind of make sure you're eating carbs with nuts, even though they have a little bit in them. Same thing with peanut butter. I think peanut butter is not a significant amount that you would still want to get maybe some fruit or some crackers with your peanut butter. But an orange has, I think, 18. I just said 20 carbs. So doing that with a handful of almonds and stick is the good pairing of carbs and protein for a snack. And then dinner. So this one's pretty low. We have, some roasted salmon, roasted asparagus, and like some potatoes. So 1 baked potato is about 40 grams of carbohydrates. If you're shooting for 60, and then if like this is an example of more like diced potatoes, you can have more potatoes, or if you want to have some corn on the side, if you're shooting for 60. But 3 to 6 ounces of salmon is going to be a great source of protein. And then you get your veggies and your carbs in this one. And this is kind of a good little segue into this may be a better option to use this other non-number portion technique. But yeah, just kind of some general little bit of meal and snack ideas in here for you on if you're wanting to shoot for 45 carbs. So the plate method, this is a really great tool that you don't have to count anything. But this helps monitor portion sizes and helps with the carb consistency. So it works by making about 1/4 of our plate carbohydrates, 1/4 protein, and then half of our plate to be any of those non-starchy vegetables. Your plate does not need to look like this every single day all the time. It's just kind of a nice reminder of how to balance things out and just some direction when it comes to portion. But I tell people, just use it as a checklist. If you're having chili or tacos or stir fry and all of your foods are mixed together, as long as you're getting those types of foods mixed in your meal somehow, that's a perfect balanced meal. And if you're hungry, it's okay to go back for seconds. But if you're full, you certainly don't have to finish. And so this can kind of be a good tool, whether it's at home, whether it's like, eating out. With eating out, it's required by law for them to have the carb content information on their website. But you can also use this as well. The third tool that kind of goes to the plate method in a sense, but is kind of its own thing at the same time, is called intuitive eating or mindful eating. And this is a really good tool to also help monitor those portion sizes, but it really helps you meet your individualized nutrition needs. And it works by really listening to your body, honoring its hunger and fullness cues. And we want to use those hunger and fullness cues to determine how much we feel like eating, but also how often we feel like eating. Because if you're hungry, that's your body telling you, I need fuel, I need nutrition. But if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat just because it's been 2 hours or something. But not everyone has those hunger fullness cues, whether it's certain medical conditions, whether they've been maybe lost a little bit, or if it's just been a crazy busy work day and we just haven't had time to even think about food. So that's where it's the balance of keeping in mind that 2 to 5 hour rule of when we go longer than 5 hours without eating, we tend to overeat, our blood sugars drop. So just kind of for metabolism, blood sugars, energy levels, just throwing a meal or a snack in if you're going longer than that 5 hours. And the goal, I feel like something really good to just be reminded of or keep in mind with all of this is the goal with nutrition is how we can fuel and nourish our body. We can't just not eat. So, because we're going to only tend to overeat because your body's trying to play catch up if we haven't eaten. And there's just so much negativity, misinformation online. It's, all these things are made out to be bad, but it's, we have to eat. It's just maybe what we're eating and how we're putting things together. So it's just how we kind of have to change our mindset on how we think about food, which is hard to do. We've kind of been told all these things our whole entire life. But food's not the enemy in this sense. But if you're wanting to kind of maybe get back into, figuring out those hunger fullness cues, taking your time with your meals, eating slowly, because your gut and your brain are constantly communicating. So it takes time for our brain to or our stomach to communicate to our brain that, hey, we're full. So taking anywhere about 20 to 30 minutes for meals, if you can, to let them to communicate. Because if we're eating really, really fast, then give yourself like 10 minutes. And then we just realized, oh, I ate really fast. I overate and I'm stuffed. And then my favorite principle with intuitive eating, mindful eating, is that there's no forbidden foods. It's moderation of all foods is key. Because whenever we cut out something that we love, we're going to overindulge later. We're going to overeat it. And almost making a food forbidden makes us want it and crave it more, which doesn't help at all. So yeah, make all foods fit. Talk about hydration. Water does and hydration does so much for our body. It's going to help with energy, relieve constipation, help digestion, but it also helps our blood sugars. So a lot of the times if we're not drinking enough water, being dehydrated can make our blood sugars high. I know we're really only talking about nutrition today, but there's a lot of things that affect our blood sugars besides just what we eat. Stress can raise our blood sugars. If we're sick in the hospital, your blood sugars are going to be high. Activity, that can mess with our blood sugar. So I encourage you to talk to your doctor or, leave it in the comment section if you have a more specific question, but there's, other things besides nutrition that can affect it here, such as dehydration. So we just want to make sure you're staying hydrated, watching out for carbs and empty calories in liquid form, like soda, juice, sweet tea, lemonade, slushies, smoothies, energy drinks. So you can still have those things. It's just maybe how much. That's we can kind of mess with the carb counting a bit. And so we just want to make sure you're developing a plan to maintain your fluids, whether you're carrying a water bottle, set alarms on your phone, using a straw. But most people need about 64 ounces or 8 cups of water a day. If you feel like you're struggling to get that in, you can try Crystal Light, Mio, Propel, Gatorade Zero, lemon, lime in your waters, or any of those carbonated waters that exist, because that all counts. But we just really want a light yellow urine color. That's really the best way to tell if individually we're staying hydrated. Sugar alcohols. So now we're going to talk about sugar alcohols and artificial sweeteners. In my mind, it's very easy to get those two confused. So at the end, there's a slide comparing the two side by side. But sugar alcohols, this is a type of reduced calorie sweetener that provide half the calories of sugar and other carbs. They are harder on the body to digest. They don't affect your blood sugar as much, but they still affect your blood sugar. And these are typically anything ending in OL, like sorbitol, mannitol, xylitol, erythritol. But even though they're called sugar alcohols, they have no alcohol in them. And you'll often find these in products labeled sugar-free or no sugar added. as you can kind of see in some of these pictures above, and a lot of like your ice cream, cookies, candies. You can find those. But very confusing, often misconception here is that sugar-free means carb-free, and it does not. So all those sugar-free products, they're still going to affect your blood sugar. They still have carbs in them. So that's why we just want to read that nutrition facts label and see what it says for total carbohydrates. There are some sugar-free like beverages that won't have carbohydrates, but if you're getting like sugar-free cookies and cakes, things like that, just because you're taking out the sugar doesn't mean you're taking away like the flour that still has carbs and things like that. And I remember looking at a piece of sugar-free candy, and I think it was like 2 pieces still had 16 carbs. So, both, you can still use it, just kind of being mindful that it's not necessarily a free food. Plus, they can have some negative side effects. Excessive consumption may cause gas, bloating, have a laxative effect. And consider the price as well. They often tend to cost more. So I typically tell people just get your regular chocolate, regular candy, and just cut back on how much you're eating of it. But then we have artificial sweeteners. So these are non-nutritive sweeteners that offer the sweet taste of sugar. There's no carbs, no calories, no sugar, and they have no effect on your blood sugar. And when used in place of sugar, it can help us stay within our recommended carbohydrates for meals and snacks. These are like Equal, Splenda, Sweet One, Sweet and Low, Stevia. And these are safe to consume. The FDA has deemed them safe to consume in moderation. But some people notice they don't feel good when they consume them, whether it's like headaches, joint pain, GI issues sometimes. So you know your body best. If that's the case, just use your regular sugar and cut back on how much you use. But these are safe to consume if you do like them. And a lot of people like stevia because it's not technically artificial. It just gets lumped into this category since it doesn't affect your blood sugars. But stevia is technically natural, plant-based, but some people still don't like the aftertaste of stevia. So to kind of compare the two, artificial sweeteners do not affect your blood sugar, but sugar alcohols might. So just make sure you're checking the nutrition facts label if you are consuming something with sugar alcohols. But both can definitely be used in diabetes management when used properly, and you're just kind of aware of how they affect your blood sugar. A little touch about alcohol. Alcohol is weird. So alcohol will actually lower your blood sugar, but not that alcohol is a safe way to lower your blood sugar because it impairs our liver to release more glucose. So if alcohol lowers our blood sugar, your liver may not kick in to bring your blood sugar back to where we want it. So the main takeaway, if you want to drink alcohol, is just don't drink on an empty stomach. Have it with a food or close to a meal or snack time, something ideally with some carbs and protein so your blood sugar doesn't drop too low. And even if it's a really sugary drink like a margarita, or whether it's no carbs like just straight liquor, it's still going to lower your blood sugar. And so women should drink either 1 drink or less a day, and men, they can have 2 drinks or less a day and be safe. But if you do drink alcohol several times a week, just make sure you let your doctor know before prescribing any medication. And a drink is considered 1.5 ounces of liquor, 5 ounces of wine, and 12 ounces of beer. There's a bunch of cookbooks in here for you guys to check out. So again, this will all be in your email. But so if you want to check out some cookbooks, a bunch of recipes as well. These are more diabetes geared, but I snuck one in there that's not necessarily specific for diabetes. But that's because you don't have to use like a diabetes cookbook, a diabetes website, because you can really make any recipe work as long as you're kind of using some of the tools we learned about today. But a lot of great resources in these websites. Okay, summary overall. Congratulations, you have all made it towards the end. So I know we've really gone through a lot today. Definitely information overload. But that's why you have this refer back to. My contact information's on the next slide. But just really kind of the main things I want you all to remember is that the three main food groups in our diet are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And we need all three of these guys in our diet. Yes, carbohydrates affect your blood sugar, but it doesn't mean we can't have them. It's just smaller portions. Eat however many meals and snacks you want. We just want to eat every 2 to 5-ish hours. And try to include some sort of carb with the protein and some non-starchy vegetables, most meals. And the goal with this, we want to create those lifelong sustainable changes. Focus on progress, not perfection, because we don't have to be perfect to control diabetes. We don't have to be perfect for anything health-wise. But remember, change occurs slowly. It's setting those small, measurable goals that are practical for you. And the nice thing is what's healthy for you is also healthy for your whole entire family. So this doesn't veer far from just nutrition for healthy eating ages 2 and up. Maybe they don't have to be so consistent or watch the amount of carbs, but no one should be eating like a high carb diet. So this isn't going to hurt anyone either. Yeah, so thank you all for letting me talk to you all this evening. I'm going to be taking some questions in the chat box, but if you need anything, call me, email me. If you do want to have a dietitian visit one-on-one, we have a bunch of dietitians here at the hospital, and all you need is a referral from your doctor. And then if you want to do some more digging about diabetes and kind of where a lot of this information came from, check out some of those references.
Okay, we have a few questions in the chat.
I like it. Yeah, I see that.
This was back at the beginning of the program. Kim asked what about the added sugar? And she said that is very high. And I don't think Kim is in the room anymore to ask what she was referring about.
Is it earlier on though? Because I know we
it was early. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, like that we talked about yogurt. So Yoplait yogurt was higher in added sugar. I think it was around 12. So if, limiting that to 25 grams a day, you can make it work. Or maybe if you went with like that plain Greek yogurt and added like some fruit yourself, you would still have added sugar to spend elsewhere. So it's just kind of, how do you want to spend certain things? But knowing that, because 25, when you really start looking at foods, that goes pretty quickly. So, but a little bit is perfectly healthy to consume.
Okay, this is a pretty good question. If our blood sugar drops after not eating for 5 hours, how is that affected by our sleep or by fasting?
So I'm gonna read book. Okay, sorry. Okay, so if our blood sugar drops after not eating for 5 hours, how is that affected by our sleep? Yeah, so I mean, definitely if our blood sugars are too low or too high, I mean, that's gonna kind of mess with if that we may not get as good as sleep, we may not be thinking as well as we want. And so with fasting, good question there. So your body wants about a 10 to 12-hour break from the last time you eat to the first time you eat. That's kind of ideal for body reset, weight loss. So whenever we go longer than that, like 14, 16, or 18 hours, it actually might spike your blood sugar. So I would recommend kind of shooting for like a 10 to 12-hour fast, but you are more than welcome to fast on that 14, 16, 18 if your blood sugars are under control. But just sometimes by not eating, your liver is just going to be spitting out more sugar. So checking your blood sugar, wearing a continuous glucose monitor, those are some great ways to know what is it doing to me and my body, and can I get away with doing this?
Okay, you discussed goals for carb intake, but I'm wondering how much protein should be paired with it?
Question. Yeah. So protein, about 1/4 of your plate is a good resource, or shooting for 3 to 6 ounces per meal, which is also the equivalent to 10 to 30 grams per meal. And everyone's protein needs are a little bit different too, but 10 to 30 is kind of a good meal snack goal to shoot for.
How soon after waking should we eat?
I would say this is very dependent on the person. Some people's liver starts kicking in within an hour, so maybe within an hour or two. But if you're not a breakfast person, it can be like a morning snack, a couple hours after waking up. But I would say within an hour or two, if you can. But again, if you're checking your blood sugars, wearing a CGM, we can definitely tweak that, depending on how your body's reacting to it.
Okay, and this is a question for me. Will we get the recording, please? Yes, it will be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow, and I will send out an email with the link as soon as I get it from marketing. So if I get it early, I'll send it tomorrow, and if I don't get it early enough, it might be Monday. But you know, you check over the weekend, and even if you don't get the email, they might just put it up after I go home. What about keto products? Are they generally okay?
Yeah, so that's where I would just look at your food label because I would say it depends, like if you are doing like a keto bread and you're eating other carbs like fruits with your meal, you may still be getting enough carbs, but to use caution with it because it could almost be too low in the carbs. Plus, if you want to save money, I would just get your regular tortillas, your regular bread. Little cheaper, less processed, but as long as you're looking at your food labels, you know, you can use a keto bread, but you don't have to.
Okay,
Plus, they may have sugar, alcohols, and it hurts sometimes, like especially like the bars and the candy. If you notice you're having some gas or diarrhea or bloating, that could be maybe be a culprit.
okay. What now? You did reference this a little bit. What about intermittent fasting for those who have not had luck with weight loss and have had type 2 diabetes and liver and gallbladder issues?
I would say you should come see us because that's a loaded question. So yeah, I think you said, so wait, have you tried, so the thing about intermittent fasting is you can't just not eat and then eat whatever you want within like a 6 to 8 hour time frame. Um, you know, so I would say try to shoot for about 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours there, and really trying to do some of the things we talked about today. Because not only is this going to be good for blood sugars, this is exactly what pretty much what I recommend for weight loss as well, pretty similar. Um, Liver, this is going to be good for your liver health, and then gallbladder issues. So sometimes we have to be a little bit more restrictive on fat depending on tolerance. But I would say any little bit you can take from this should really help all those. But please call me, email me, kind of tailor it towards you more as well.
Okay, and this one, I'm not sure of the question, not a picky eater. I just need some source that say, eat this and when, and resources. I will make it and eat it.
Okay, I just need some resources. Yes, check out those recipe links. You don't need to go, yeah, you can, if you want to get the cookbook, you can, but I like the free website links in there too. Um, I would say those are going to be some good resources.
And the library has some good resources also.
Yeah.
What's the most amount of fruit allowed per day?
What is it? 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day? And so I think a serving is like a piece of fruit, about half a cup of fruit. So, I mean, as if I mean it's kind of hard to overdo it on the fruit in this sense. So as long as you're still kind of balancing it out with other foods and not neglecting other food groups, it's pretty hard to get too much fruit.
Okay, and I think that's our last question in the chat so far.
I did see something at the beginning. Yes,
Oh,
I am Lindsey Moore. I just finally
oh,
changed
okay.
my name, so now it's Lindsey Robinson. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was me a couple of months back.
Okay.
I think was there, I think I saw
Is it,
maybe
the one just came in. Is it better to select low fat or no fat options?
it really is depending on what you're trying to like focus on. So there are some medical conditions where we do need to get low fat products. Um, but I would say if you're talking about dairy, you can honestly do either or. So typically we do want to get limit saturated fat to like lower fat milks, low fat yogurt, low fat cottage cheese. But if you're really cutting back on those other saturated fats, you can do full fat dairy. Um, if it's like salad dressings, you can get the low fat or you can get the regular version. Sometimes there are more carbs in low fat products, but not all the time. So that's something you can kind of look at the label on. And it's whatever you prefer taste bud wise too, because sometimes the taste can differ. Um, but I think both can be definitely used and be healthy.
Okay, what is going on with thinning hair and hair loss?
Could be a couple different things. Sometimes that's hormonal. I would say talk to your doctor. Because how kind of a dietitian works in a sense is we have to have a medical diagnosis and then we can tell you like nutrition treatment, nutrition recommendations to help with that. So unfortunately, we can't really diagnose much, but I would say talk to your, because you also could be low in certain vitamins and minerals. I've seen that before. Doesn't mean that's necessarily it. But yeah, talk to your doctor.
Okay. Okay, we are at the end of our questions.
I think maybe it was a direct message to me. So I think I saw some in here. But aren't butter and mayo not healthy fats? So maybe limit. Yeah, limit the butter. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of mayo is okay. And then where are dairy and fruits on my plate? So there's a couple different versions of the plate. The plate that we talked about today is the one recommended by the American Diabetes Association. So fruits would be in that 1/4 carbs. And then yogurts and milks would kind of be considered in that same aspect, or you can have a little serving on the side. But dairy, as in cheese and cottage cheese, that would count as your protein part.
Okay,
Okay.
look forward to the recording.
Okay. Can I answer one more, Cheryl?
Sure,
Or
oh, sure,
turn it
sure.
off? Okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
there was,
coming
I
direct
guess
to
some
you.
were like direct to me
Yeah.
and then some were to everyone. So, how long to stop eating before bed? Honestly, it's just kind of back that 10 to 12 hours. There's nothing wrong with eating right before bed. It's not going to get stored any differently as, you know, if you were to have that same thing at 3 o'clock. It's just, you know, try to get that little bit of a break. But if you're hungry, I want you to eat, because we're only going to be more hungry the next day when we wake up. So that's a fun little myth I love to bust. Okay. Okay. I think okay, that's everything I see on my end. So thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, she likes that tip. I'm sure that's the eating before bed or eating without eating before bed. Yeah. Okay. I have put the link to the survey in the chat. When I send out the email with the YouTube link, I'll include the survey link. So if you missed it in the chat, you'll get a second chance. That's all we have for tonight. Lindsey, thank you so much for some great information. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And looking forward to seeing you at future Mid-Continent virtual programs. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.